Every picture tells a story, and what stories the Johnston Photographic Collection can tell. Give or take a few, the collection is now some 43,000 in number, and behind each one lies a story. Take the two divers, for example. They were employed on the ill-fated breakwater, so that helps tell the story of how the breakwater was constructed and why it ultimately failed. The engineer in charge of the project was Thomas Stevenson, one of the famous Stevenson family of lighthouse engineers. Thomas was the father of Robert Louis Stevenson, and in 1868 the young Robert Louis spent some time living at Harbour Terrace in Wick. Robert Louis's opinions of Wick were not exactly glowing compliments, and some of that story can be heard on Wick Voices. Alan Henry narrates the story, and Simon Lamb recreates the words of Robert Louis Stevenson. To round off, there exists a story that Robert Louis was taken on a dive by one of these photographed divers. One of the joys of working with the Johnston photographs comes when people submit the information that tells the story of the picture. There is a great photograph of a lorry coming north at Lather and Wheel, and this is what Mr. Dennis Manson submitted. This lorry was an old-style Shell BP tanker with ribbed wooden sides round the removable tanks. It was a relief lorry in the late 1940s and early 1950s, while the regular Wick and Thurso lorries were overhauled and painted in Aberdeen. Here it would have been driven by Charlie Gunn of Wick. Later, my grandfather Bob Lyle from the Thurso depot drove it for a while with me as passenger. I spent many happy Saturdays and school holidays with my grandfather, mainly up west to Betty Hill or east as far as May. We encountered a hilarious situation at Strathy one Saturday, but that's another story. Beside the tanks in the bank were kept 2 or 3 5-gallon measures for delivering probably 20 or 30 gallons of paraffin to crofters up west, for heating, lighting, and also for fuel for tractors. I used to fill up the containers while my grandfather would carry them to the storage tank. Heavy work. It was the mid-50s before he got a lorry with a pump. Prior to that, it was all gravity-fed. This vehicle was a 5-ton petrol engine Dennis. My grandfather didn't like it much as it lacked power. In its final days, you could walk up hills faster. The Breadalbane Cinema in Wick is now long gone, but it can be remembered by 2 wonderful Johnston photographs showing the interior. Lots of stories were told there. Rosebank House, which became the Henderson Memorial Nursing Home, a place where many stories were born, is remembered in the Johnston photographs. There are a number of shots showing the exterior of the house, and 2 provide details of the outside and inside of the Rosebank ambulance, also donated by Miss Adeline Henderson. Adeline Henderson's portrait now hangs in the Wick Heritage Museum, and with it comes the story of how a tear was seen coming from Adeline's eye. Thankfully, Miss Henderson now appears content in the museum. No tears have been detected. The Johnston photographs can of course be viewed at your leisure at www.johnstoncollection.net.